I met a guy recently. His wife died, and I said, "How you doing?" He said, "Great, never been better."
Uh-huh. Reflex.
I go, "Really?" "Yep, doing great, never been better." Really? It didn't occur to him. He probably meant it. But never been better? Never? How about when your wife was alive? Was there? Yeah, that's it. They can't accept the vulnerability. They can't. Never been better. Let me say something quickly about this middle page 4. And that is, I talked about this already, but just remind ourselves, this from yesterday, and then I want to talk about strokes and rituals will be done. The voices in our head. You missed that first bullet point. Let me just read this. Again, some of this is repeat from last week, but I think that's okay because this is powerful stuff. Critical parent voices are known as the harsh superego, negative self-talk, cognitive traps, low self-esteem, catastrophic expectations. Critical parent makes put-down statements like you're bad, stupid, ugly, crazy, and sick. In short, you're doomed and not okay. The critical parent's main objective is to control the child by preventing it from feeling good about itself. I italicize that on purpose. That is the main objective of a critical parent. I want to block you from enjoying yourself and thinking good things about you. It's opposed to what the natural child wants. If the child wants to be loved, the critical parent says, you don't deserve it. If the child wants to give love, the critical parent says, it isn't wanted. If the child wants to give a hug, critical parent says, no, whatever it is. If the child is angry at an unrewarding job, the critical parent says, they don't get a treat or something. This is the best you can do because you're so lazy. If the child comes up with a new idea that goes against old points of view, the critical parent says, you must be crazy to think like that. By the way, I'm always picking on churches. That's very common in churches. What are you talking? What are you talking? We've always know. That's not, what you need to do is X, Y, Z. Any kind of new thinking to them, they beat down real quickly if they're a critical parent. Critical parent activates the adapted child, which feels guilty, fearful, or ashamed. That's the appropriate response when you're on a critical parent, by the way. The thing the critical parent does best is to make people feel not okay and to force them to do things they don't want to do. It's only useful in situations in which people oppress or take things away from each other. That is, in that sense, you might say you're writing a justice. It's righteous. Don't give that toy back.
You want to feel superior, don't you think?
Critical parents want to feel superior, yeah. And this is where really good specialists in TA will say, based on the desire, you said they want to, the desire, why would a person do that? It might be because they're wounded. A lot of times it's because their child has felt, we call it a one-down position, an inferior position for so long. They're convinced the only way they can get strokes is by being in the critical parent position and then telling someone to do. It makes them feel safe. Maybe they were hurt and in danger as a child. If I got to stay in control and I got to condemn you with my arms up or whatever, that'll make you won't hurt me because I'll hurt you first. I will constantly control. So the causes might be from a child need, but they come out as a critical parent. That's a very common one.
I found out that
parents can do the best job they can, and it's still not good enough. My mom used to say, I'm doing the best job I can. Until one day my counselor said, well, that's not good enough. And I go, let me write that down. That's good.
whoever heard
And so I used it to us next time she said it, because she said it all the time. Well, son, I'm doing the best job I can. To which I said, what's not good enough? She froze. Like, now what do I say? Because it's true. It's not good. I don't care. And that's why people all the time, when they're so sad and their child's on my couch, their ego state, and they're just so sad, and I talk about it, particularly a parent. Well, they did the best job. I knew they loved me. I know deep down inside when they were hitting or yelling. They never said I love you, but I know they meant it because they're parents. And I go, well, you didn't deserve that. Well, they did the best they could. And I go, great, but you deserve better. It's news. They've never thought about it that way before because they've always justified it because that child, I'm too ashamed to talk about my needs. That's right. It can be hard. Another little footnote, very important. I'm trying to encourage you parents and grandparents. If your critical parent is loud in your mind, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a good nurturing parent to someone else. Why? Because you don't feel like you deserve it yourself, so you're going to feel like, why does my child or my grandchild or my whomever deserve it either? Because it's going to feel so unnatural for you to praise them or encourage them. The natural thing that come out of your mouth is something condemnatory. It's going to be natural because it's so loud in your mind that you learn from your childhood, like you said, those parents past generation, It's difficult, and I'm begging you to try to get counseling and work on that so that it is more natural to be a nurturing parent to a literal other child, or sometimes other human beings, other adults, no matter what the age is. A critical parent does not want you to feel good or okay at anything. You're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're this, you're this, you're this. Those are automatic negative thoughts. The nurturing parent loves the child unconditionally and says things like, I love you. You're a winner. You're smart. You're a princess. Or prince for Scott and us and Tom. You're beautiful. Same thing for Scott and us and Tom. You're beautiful. People can learn to cultivate and develop their nurturing parent. Notice how there I said they can learn it, because most people don't learn how to cultivate their critical parent. That's what they grew up hearing all the time. Unless you're in a typical household where one person is the critical parent all the time, and then the spouse was the rescuer. So there's one parent who always took in the bad, I'm sorry, baby, but they took bad cop, good cop role. Mm-hmm. And so in their mind, they grow up with some strong they'll have both messages, but they'll battle that out for a long time. That's a very common parenting scenario where you have the bad cop, good cop, critical parent, nurturing parent. People can learn you can learn to cultivate nurturing parent, adult, or natural child to fight their critical parent. For example, in group therapy, Sunny Cutlow learned about and put together nurturing parent tape recordings, which she listened to whenever her critical parent tried to make her feel not okay. She also developed logical arguments against her critical's accusations, and all this helped free her child from the voices in her head. There's all kinds of things you can do. Just 2 nights ago, I did counseling with a person over Skype, and I was encouraging her. She still has a lot of terrible negative stuff in her mind. I gave her a lot of tips, and one was in her classroom to print out true messages and put them in the back of the room. Put that junk up huge, and I told her what I would put out. And I said, put it out, print it out, laminate it. So when you're teaching, you're constantly, because the negative messages are so loud. I said, if kids ask what's that about, you say it's just true. That is, it doesn't have the name on it, but they're just true messages that they're nurturing, they're kind. I said, print that stuff out, put it on your desk, put it in the book, put it in your car, put it on the mirror at home. I used to do that with Elaine all the time. I'd get a dry eraser marker, which writes real easily on a mirror, and I'd write true messages on there. And a few times, and if she were here, she'd tell you, a few times she was struggling so much, I just, every once in a while I play counselor, I gave her a marker, and I said, come here, honey, let's go to the bathroom. She grins, she smirks, and I gave it to her. And I said, and she got up, this is back in Houston, she got back, I said, get on the sink, I said, write this down. And I had her write out these true messages that we had worked on, and I know these are the right things for her to say, but it wasn't in her to say them. So the practice of having her to just write it, it didn't come from within her, but eventually it did, because that junk stayed up there for months. And every day she got ready, she read them over and over and over and over. What I've done in my own self, I have true messages I put out in bullet points, and I print it out. I've done this at least one time. Put it underneath my monitor at work, and they're there all the time, true messages. Right now in my desk, I've got some summaries of books I've read, and it's the highlights of the major parts of it for true good thinking that battles what I do. And it's in my drawer. Pull it out. For a long time, put it right on top of my desk. So every day I'd come in, I'd start the day off, read my Bible, pull that thing over and read the true beliefs. All the time. So it's not magic, but I guess you can tell you what, it's sure hard to listen to the critical parent when the nurturing parent voice becomes finally louder. And I say this all the time in counseling, sometimes we need a hero, sometimes it has to be you in your own mind. And I encourage people, I picture them, what would your critical parent look like? What's he or she doing? Oh, he's doing this with his finger or whatever. If a nurturing parent came in and saw a hero to stop it, what would you do? Well, she or he would put her hand up and block. To picture it. So it's you, one's doing this, and one's got their fist, and one's cussing them out, you're a loser, and one steps in between what? The child and the critical parent. And for some people, they can't even picture a nurturing parent do it. And then I go, well, imagine for a second, have you ever seen anybody else nurture their child? And they go, oh yeah, I've seen people. We have to fantasize other people and then drop that into their fantasy because it's so foreign to them. And then we practice it. And one of the ways you practice is visualizing it. We write down the true messages, and we say, you knock that critical parent off. You tell them to shut up. Knock it off. Or to use it in counseling, I said this in a sermon, it's stop therapy. Stop it. So put your hand up. Stop. I don't want to hear that. Stop. If my children were in here and someone walked in the room and started doing blah, 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 I want to stand in between them. Knock it off. I don't care who you are. Stop it. I will be the hero to my child, and I have to do that inside too. We all have to do it inside with that negative. That's not helpful most of the time. Most of the time, the critical parent's not helpful. We don't grow when we feel condemned and judged. We don't feel open. We don't feel vulnerable. I'm going to move on and finish up. If there's anything else? I think if this is resonate with you deeply, if it's bringing up stuff, I'm encouraging you, keep at it. Don't give up. And you meet with me, meet with someone else, read some literature, because God can use this in profound ways, I'm telling you. Changed my life. We talked about strokes already, what a stroke is. At the bottom of page 4, there are positive and negative strokes. If you know parenting tips, they'll say there's positive attention and negative attention. It's kind of like that. Positive stroke, smiling, really listening, holding hands, saying I love you, positive strokes. It's a way to let a person know you are with them. Another psychological term is validation. I validate you. I'm with you in the pain. I'm with you in the joy. I hear you. I'm listening. Look in the eyes. That's positive. Hold the hands. High fives, back rubs, whatever. Smiling. It's positive. A negative stroke is still a stroke. You're still getting recognition. But you don't like the way you feel, but you kind of do. It's muddy water, right? It's not mud. It's muddy water. It's sarcasm, put downs, a slap, an insult. Someone says, I hate you. When you're hungry for those kind of strokes, you'll get the muddy water. Now, why is it still water, not just full on mud? Because it is some kind of attention. There's a little bit of validation in there because what? At least they're talking to me. You're getting some attention. They might be cussing you out, but I've got his attention for a second.
He knows you're alive.
That's exactly right. And that's why children, literal children, will grow up and put up with all kinds of negative strokes from horrible parents and parenting, addicts, wounded people, whatever, because they'll rather get nasty water. That's all they know to get. That's all, number one, that's horrible. That's so sad. 2, it's extra sad and horrible when that literal child grows up and still keeps wanting the same thing, which is not their fault, right? That's what I talked about earlier, is that they still grow up and say, I still want to, and counseling can help with that. But that's because they got a negative stroke. They'd rather get something than nothing. And why is that? Eric Burns said, because we're depleted. Our tank is so narrow for most people, we don't have enough of it. That's why I said, not to toot my horn, but I'm just, if you were there and you remember, I said in the sermon, most people, their tank, I said, I'm using this background. I said, they never get tired of being encouraged. I said, their tank never gets filled up. That was back to the stroke idea. It's just true. How many people get tired of being encouraged? I mean, you don't. If you block it like a ninja, you get tired of it because you won't accept it. But if you are accepting it, you don't, your cup runneth over and you go, bring it on. And people just love.
So how do you learn to accept it?
How do you learn to accept it? There's a few things. If you're in a counseling situation, I'm going to figure out their past and try to figure out where they learned it wasn't good to accept it. And 99% of the time, it came from a parent who taught them. And 99% of the time, the person won't say, my parents taught me that. I will have to ask them, tell me about some interactions. What happened when you did something well? If you got straight A's, if you did this, or if you were hurt. And they'll go, oh, I guess my mom would say blank, or my dad would say blank. And then I have to help them see they implicitly were taught that their needs and feelings were not good. They were implicit, they were discounted. And for a lot of people, that's very difficult to hear those words because they've been so defensive for their parents. Those guilt messages, well, their family. Well, I'm a Christian, I forgave them. And they come right to the rescue with the critical parent tapes, and I get to hear it. They spew it on me. It doesn't work. I go, I hear that, but that's not. I'm not convinced at all. I think it's very unfair you were treated that way. You deserve better. You deserve to be unconditionally loved and accepted. Well, no, they did the best they could. No, they didn't. Well, even if they did, who cares? You're still hurting. No, I'm fine. Well, then why are you here? Well, because I just thought maybe. In other words, they've tried like a ninja to give these. It doesn't work. And once we get past the fact, I try to get them to finally accept they didn't have the childhood they needed, they deserved. And that's where they learn those messages. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve people's praise and comfort. And that's a self-esteem issue. That's a big breakthrough. If I can get them to see that's where they learned it, step 2 is how to fight those negative messages. And that's why I just gave you examples. Then I will process that. We process the pain and woundedness and the loss of the childhood, and they replace those thoughts with things I just said. We print them out, we put them on mirrors,
So that should lead you.
yes, ma'am, it does lead them. If they got to rehearse it. It's not like once a month. Every day they've got to replace it over and over. It's got to be around their normal life, like in the car speedometer. They've got to put it in their Bible. They've got to put it in the mirror. They've got to surround them. I know, I read it again. I'm loved by God. You don't believe it yet. So you've got to keep repeating it until that's it. So to the nurturing parent. Another thing that's very helpful is in a counseling and or support group is that we want to be around a person who does feed us nutrients and encourages and calls us on it when we're not doing a good job. So if I said, Vanna, thank you so much for bringing lasagna. That was great. You go, I know it's no big deal. And if I knew that was a problem for you to receive encouragement, if that kind of relationship we had, I'd say, Vanna, sweetie, you're doing it again. I'm trying to praise you, and you discounted my encouragement. You said, I know it's no big deal. I'd say, it's a big deal to me, and I'm thankful for it. And then those three things go, okay, thank you, David, you're right. And then over time, you get better at accepting it. Does that make sense? So if someone can call you on it if you deflected it, you go, no. You don't have to cry, thank you so much for saying thank you. It just means you try to receive it, Those are the big 3 steps I use all the time, and they help tremendously. Tremendously. Reading good books on it can help too. Good question. The last thing on page 5, rituals, pastime. Now this is in pastimes and games. This is a big issue, and I narrowed it down to very, very, very little just on purpose. So if you want more of this, feel free to read the books that on TA. There's good stuff here. Because strokes are such a big deal, now let's back up, because the child ego state likes strokes, likes attention and validation, typically doesn't get it, and typically feels guilty because the critical parent blocks it. Someone tries to praise you, the critical parent steps in the way. Don't you praise him? You should know better. Well, he did the best. Oh, I know. The critical parent blocks the encouragement. And then when it's time to critique, they turn around and critique the child. And since they block the encouragement and block the stroke, they're crying out for attention. Since they're crying out for attention, and they don't have the capacity to say, I need attention, I need comfort, I need encouragement, we humans do certain things to get strokes. One is to be that covert vocabulary. And here's 3 other ways our little child's trying to get strokes without just saying it. Here are the 3. Does that make sense? Okay, here are the 3 common ways. A ritual. These are a preset exchange of recognized strokes. This is what everybody does in the world. Hi, how are you? Fine, thanks. Well, see you around. Bye. That's a ritual. It's a ritual to get strokes because I'm recognized, I talk, hello, da-da-da-da-da. Someone looks in my eyes, basically. It's preset. We both get stroked. We both get validated to some degree and recognized it's time to go. It's a preset. What happens when the ritual's over and you're still stuck with that person in the room? How does that feel? What happens when we call it small talk, but he calls it a ritual? When the small talk's done, how you doing? Doing great. How about that weather? How about them Chiefs? Well, that's the next part, number 2. That's called a pastime. It's a preset conversation around a certain subject that is common in a particular culture. Pastimes are most evident at cocktail parties and family get-togethers and churches. Some common pastimes on a Sunday morning are potluck or catered. Where'd this food come from? How'd you make this? That kind of thing. The weather. Boy, this weather's been crazy. Global warming, what do you think? General Motors. I like Ford, Chevy, Dodge. Just check one because they have a better engine body. Drugs. All right, politics. Who's divorcing who? Called musical beds. That's the gossip. The point is, these pastimes are, in a social contract theory, these are things we've all learned it's okay to talk about because they won't be offensive. These are preset parameters. It's a playground we can all play in, and we all agree it's okay to play here, but you can't go in that playground over there for a second. You don't talk about what and what, usually. Politics and religion. And that's nonsense. People love to talk about politics and religion. But anyway, the reason why we're told that is because it might be offensive. So pastimes are preset conversations. Almost always you'll hear, and you'll do it if you're not careful. Maybe now you'll start noticing it. You'll know all the time. Almost always you'll hear a pastime when the rituals run out. When the rituals, hi, how are you? Doing well. How's your mom? Doing great. Hadn't seen her in a while. Yep, good. Now what do? Pastime is brought up like that. A lot of times churches is one of the best places to see rituals. Now this is for, hi, how are you? Fine, thanks. Well, see you around. Bye. Sometimes churches might have 7 or 8. How you doing? How's your mom? How's that surgery? Okay, good, great. But if that's over, it's time to leave. And so that's just enough time to get some coffee. It's just enough time to shake my hand. It's just enough time to greet someone and go back to the car. And because that's safe and acceptable, I did my duty. We all got stroked, time to go home. And then there's pastimes, and I've heard them here around the coffee table, around the water cooler at work. It's tell me, what do you think about them engines? What do you think about that game? What do you think about my crop came in? There's pastimes here in Kansan pastimes. And then there's different things. Then there's a different category that's not a ritual per se, if someone really wants to talk serious about something. And my personality type is just a personality type issue. I don't like rituals or pastimes. Rituals kind of okay, but because I tend to like to be right into a real world. So when I ask people, if I say, Chelsea, how are you doing? I'm really asking how you're doing. It's not a ritual. It's not a ritual. I really care. I made my mind up years ago. I remember because of rituals. I didn't know this until I learned it because I did the same thing, rituals and pastimes. This professor who I love, smartest guy I'd ever met until that point. I remember where I was. We were going up in the stairwell. My last quick story. We're going up in the stairwell, and I said, his name is Wayne Stacy, Dr. Stacy. I go, hi, Dr. Stacy. How are you? How are you? And I always wanted to impress him. I always wanted, because he was so smart. I wanted him to like me, and so I was always nice and whatever. I mean, I was 22 years or whatever it was. It'd be different now, but anyway, I wanted to make him happy, make Daddy happy, kind of. And I said, hi, Dr. Stacy. How are you doing? He goes, I'm fine. And I said, good, I'm doing great. And we're on the stairs, and he paused and looked at me, as he always does, with this real kind of sarcastic, brilliant smile. He went, and just smiled at me. And I went, I mean, not that you asked, but good. And I turned all red. That was a ritual. He skipped number 2.
Yeah.
He didn't say, how are you?
Yeah.
But I knew the ritual so well, I know what he's supposed to say. I never did that again. I have never, ever, ever, ever in my life. If I say hi and I go, how are you doing? They go, great. I stop. I listen. Because I wasn't listening. I knew the ritual. It was so ingrained in me. But I've never, and I've noticed many times when Elaine sometimes or people, they'll do that. Oh, I'm sorry, what I did. And we laugh and laugh. Yep. But now that's the ritual. Pastimes we do afterwards. Games are different. Games are devious. They're repetitive. They're transactions intended to get strokes. But unfortunately, the strokes obtained are mostly negative. It's that muddy water. A game is a failed method of getting strokes. It gives emotional strokes and time struck. That's why we do it. We get some strokes. Time passes on. Most people like their time passed on. The child they want to play. They don't want to be bored. Adults are the same way when they're child ego state. They don't want to sit there and be bored. It helps time pass on. That's why we do these pastimes. There's tons of games. In the books, he gives tons of examples. I only list one because it's one of the most common I ever hear. And it's the YDYB, why don't you yes but? Why don't you yes but? That's, oh my goodness, that's common. Man, I want to lose weight. I need to lose this weight, and I'm done. I need to lose this weight. I've been gaining weight ever since, I'll pick on women because this is so common. Ever since I had those babies, I must have gained 20, 30 pounds. Why don't you go to the gym? It's, that you can get a trainer there. Yeah, I know, but it's too far away. Well, I could pick you up sometime. I go every single morning. Yeah, but that's too early. My kids are sleeping. I got to help them. Well, what about in the afternoon? Yeah, but I can't do that because my son's. But I got to lose this weight. Well, maybe you can eat differently. I can send you my airplane. Yeah, but that's too hard, and I don't have money for all that food. Well, you see what happens? It's why don't you? Yes, but. The person who started that game doesn't give a rip about really losing weight. Part of them does. What they really, really want is strokes. Because as long as I can get you and if I can keep you just keep on coming. Yeah, I know, but I've got you. And we have a conversation. So I'm getting attention from you, but it's usually negative. It's usually negative strokes. Huh?
They'll be frustrated.
So that's right. So in the games always leave, the people in the game leave feeling differently. The person who did the why don't you, they've taken on what role?
Parent.
They've taken on a parent role, trying to talk to the child. Yeah, to whatever. So since we're in a parent role trying to tell them what to do and give advice, and they're not receiving it, it's discounted. Well, we get frustrated because why don't you go to the gym early? Well, I could pick you up. Well, I could do this. Why don't you take my advice? If we're in that role, we're the parent role, we leave frustrated because the child didn't take our advice and do what we said. The child feels a little happy because they got attention from mom or daddy, the parent role, for as long as that went on. But it's not positive It wasn't a nurturing parent saying, don't worry about that, you're beautiful as you are. It's critical because you're telling them what to do. So it's a negative stroke. So the child who started it leaves a little bit happier because he's got a negative stroke, it's a little muddy water. The parent who in the situation leaves just frustrated. If the parent who left, and that's that situation, not the literal parent, the parent ego leaves frustrated, and if that parent is a rescuer, a nurturing parent by script, they're extra frustrated, but guess what they're not going to do? They're not going to give up. They're going to try next time they see you. They're going to come back and try one more time. I've been thinking about that problem. I've got it figured out. I will buy you DVDs and take it home. Yeah, I know, but I don't have the right equipment for it. I'll buy the equipment for you. And I'll come do it with you. Yeah, but that's just so hard. I don't know. You see, they go back to the game. But if a rescuer don't want to give up because they don't want the person to feel despair, sadness, or frustration. But the child in that situation doesn't give a rip. They just get a lot of the strokes. That's called a game. One is called Niggy Sob. We're adults here. Niggy Sob is the acronym. Now I've got you, you son of a. That's Niggy Sob. People who are real sick do that. Now I've got you. They're the ones who are so sweet and stroke and kind. And as soon as you come in, bam, they nail you. They're the one. Oh man, I don't want to give you names. I know people who play this game here. Hello, good to see you. Nice to see you. They're the same people look at you. Hi, nice to meet you. You're the ugliest person I've ever seen, with a smile on their face. Once you get close and get vulnerable and start talking about your life, they slam you. That is, they switch from a nurturing parent who's been very, very nurturing, and all of a sudden switch hardcore to critical. Hardcore, that's the Niggy Sob. Now I've got you. If you're a child state often, never got those needs met as a child, guess what you're going to keep doing? You'll go back to the Niggy Sob person. Because for a second you got comforted. Even though you know you're going to get slapped at the end of it, but you still have those needs. And so it's, again, the problem is not the first time it happens, it's the next time you go back to that person expecting them to be different. Does that make sense? The Niggy Sob, does that make you look in the face? Does that? Niggy Sob is when the person, they want to draw you in so they can flip you around and do a critical parent on you. Oh man, I think those are some of the worst. And there's some of this church, there's some in every church I've been to. There's some organizations, they come across real sweet and whatever, and they'll flip on you. Although, why don't you ought to? And there's a whole list of games that Eric Byrne came up with. I'll stop there. What question or comments do you have for me?
What does that mean?
That's a wonderful question. Why is it if sometimes we can't cry? First thing I'd say is, if it is a critical parent telling you should be done by now, you should stop crying, you should be whatever. If that's...
I don't believe that.
When a person struggles with that, I'd say, well then, yeah, your critical parent's telling you to be quiet. Secondly, I'd say is, have grace for yourself, because we will do what we typically, when emotionally, if we're fully giving ourselves permission, we'll do what we need to do. What I mean is, if we're fully, for example, if we're giving ourselves full permission to cry and we don't cry, we don't need to right then.
Okay.
And I'd say give yourself grace to say, maybe I don't need to. The third thing I'd say is, appreciate particularly the last thing you said, I was sad, but I couldn't cry. And then to that I was thinking, maybe you didn't need to. In other words, you can be sad and not cry. Those are not mutually exclusive. But you can be sad and your psyche, your brain says, no, I need to get these out. I got some tears left in me. And I would say just have grace yourself. Sometimes you're going to need to, sometimes you won't need to. But no judgment on whether or not you cried.
But that hurting inside doesn't go away.
It doesn't hurt and doesn't go away. And I believe
You still have that.
those are deep wounds.
Yeah.
Those are deep
Still
wounds.
there.
That when people lose spouses, children, I mean, there's no old normal. There's no old normal. There's a new normal, but there's not an old normal. That's for sure. I mean, there's
really no end to grief. I mean, it's just, it changes in intensity and so on.
Right.
And divorce and widow, whatever, it's all a type of grief.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
all losses are,
Even when I heard Gary died, I mean, it really,
yeah.
really makes me sad. It hurts. I hate to lose him, but I don't just burst out in tears.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't. That doesn't have to mean anything. It can mean that you're not there at a place to cry. It doesn't really. That doesn't mean you're a sinner or dysfunctional.
Sometimes I would really like to be able to.
If you cannot cry, maybe ever and in general, that might be something else. That is, in general, if I cannot do it, there very well could be an emotional blocker or a physiological blocker, that is some chemical balance or an emotional thing that blocks it out. And that depends. I'm not talking about, that's different. I'm trying to nuance these words carefully. I said in general. If sometimes you go, that used to make me cry, now I'm not, that doesn't mean necessarily something's wrong with you. But in general, some people said, I haven't cried. I've met people, I haven't cried in 32 years. That's weird. Not a judgment. I mean, technically, that's odd. That means something's gone on, probably why they can't. And I've counseled people, I don't know why it is, and well, let's figure it out. And sometimes it's critical parent that was so loud in their head. Sometimes, for a lot of people, the pain is so profound, they've blocked it. It's so stuffed that they can't, their child just won't even, like a little child just got their mouth covered up. I won't even let them come, I don't even look at that sad child because I won't be able to control myself. And you have to come in stages. You don't want them to start all of a sudden burst like a bubble or a balloon. That's not healthy either. So 2 stages. But since that's all I know from you, that's what I'd say is, and one is give yourself grace. But if you find yourself in general not being able to cry in life at all, it might mean something else. It doesn't mean you're profoundly dysfunctional. I mean, at worst case scenario, it'd mean that you just might have some kind of wounds that, or you just got so tired of crying, you're like, okay, I'm tired of that. I mean, that's not like a major disorder or something. The opposite's true for people who cry all the time at the drop of a hat. And I know of people, in fact, in the last DSM-5, the DSM is kind of like the Bible of psychology. It's how they diagnose things. In the DSM-5, there was a lot of talk about creating something called chronic sadness. Chronic grief is what it's called. And that's the idea of a person that affects a very small portion of the population who are going through grief, 1 or 2%. And that is, they seem not to be able to turn off the faucet. They have intense feelings of sadness years after the fact. So it's chronic in that it happens all the time, but it's after a disproportionate amount of time. So if they lost a spouse and say it's 5 or 6 years later and they're still crying all the time when they talk about them, or a loved one, they're crying all the time. I've known people with chronic, I've tried to help counsel them that. So it's not like an overnight you should turn it off and be better, but this is over prolonged. Because on average, it is on average. Spousal, someone dies, on average it takes about a year, or a child takes about a year for the intense wounds to, as one person told me, lost a son, the fog cleared. So the wound's not nearly as painful. There's usually averages, but if it's 3, 4, 5 years later, it's a chronic issue. That's a different issue where I can't stop crying right away. Then I will say, have you always been that way? Yeah, ever since I was a baby, I cried all the time. Well, that's probably not an issue. But if something changed, it probably means something. If you were not the way now you are, something's going on. Same thing with crying. If I used to do it a good bit and all of a sudden now the faucet will never turn on again, there probably means something too. I doubt something serious. It's worth exploring. But no matter what, I'd give yourself grace and say, sometimes it's just okay not to want to cry. It's okay. It's okay. So right. So don't. It's okay to cry. It's okay not to cry sometimes. So I wouldn't judge yourself and go, that's what people. Maybe I should be crying. What kind of person am I? I should be crying when. No. That's judging. That's just